mean to tell me he's a robot?
That's what I mean to tell you.
I'm paying $1,000 a day for this?
It's authentic. The West of the 1880s.
Well, at least they could have made it a little more comfortable.
Well, that's the point. This is really the way it was. If you wanted comfort, you should have stayed in Chicago.
Hey, Julie would have loved all this. Poking around for hours in all those funny shops, looking for silly
Peter,
things.
what the hell's wrong with you? You're a lawyer. You know better than anybody else what a ride she took you for.
Well, the kids.
Fine, the kids. Here you are 6 months later, still thinking about it.
No, not really. It just came to mind is all. There's a lot to do here.
Hello and welcome to Still Watching the Skies. I'm Robert Reinecke.
I'm Nat Almorel.
I'm Cody Lang.
This is our December 2016 podcast, and this month we're joined by a guest, good friend of mine from Peace Fund Radio, John Bierly.
Hello, Robert, Nat, Cody. So nice to be on. I really appreciate it, guys.
Our pleasure.
Why don't you tell our listeners about Peace Fund Radio, because you're a little bit out of our regular sphere of guests.
Well, my name, as Robert said, I'm John Bierly. I live in Elizabeth, Indiana. It's near Louisville, Kentucky. I'm 41 years old. I started writing music and movie reviews for my high school newspaper when I was 16 and never stopped. I wrote 11 years for a British action movie magazine called Impact, and I met Robert doing reviews and podcasts for Bill Raimi's Batman on Film, Sean Gerber's Modern Myth Media, and my appreciations of classic science fiction and Hammer horror are much greater for knowing him. So I appreciate all of that, Robert. I'm also on Peace Fund Radio, which is the weekly radio show for the Peace Fund, which stands for Protect, Educate, Aid Children Everywhere, with the Peace Fund's founder, Adrian Paul, whom your audience will remember as Duncan MacLeod from Highlander the series. I do an interview segment with children who've started their own charities, which is a blast. It's amazing what these kids do. They have no sense of logistics or being told no. They have these incredible ideas and they just get it done. It's fantastic. And then I'm working on another project with Adrian that I can't talk about yet, but hopefully we'll be able to talk about it at some point fairly soon.
Thanks. I'm very pleased to have you on, John, and to expand our circle of guests.
Happy to be here.
I actually have our general modus is to do little scene movies, which sometimes has not a lot of modern connection, but I think we have an exception this month. We're going back to 1973, the period in between 2001 and Star Wars, with Michael Crichton's Westworld. Going to give a short synopsis of it, and then we'll jump into the discussion of it. In the near future, the Delos Corporation runs an adult amusement park consisting of Roman World, Medieval World, and Western World, or Westworld, where for $1,000 a day, guests can indulge their fantasies among human-looking robots programmed not to hurt the guests. Friends John Blaine, played by James Brolin, and Peter Martin, played by Richard Benjamin, who is coming off a recent divorce, spend a vacation there, catting about brothels, getting involved in jailbreaks, and getting into duels with a black-clad gunslinger played by Yul Brynner. But behind the things are breaking down, putting the unsuspecting guests in danger. I'll leave the synopsis there. It's written, directed by Michael Crichton. This is his first directing credit, at least for film. Stars Yul Brynner, Richard Benjamin, James Brolin. Majel Barrett has a small role as Miss Carey, the brothel madam. Alan Oppenheimer, who many people will know for endless list of cartoon credits, including Skeletor on He-Man, or for Dr. Rudy Wells on The $6 Million Man, plays the chief supervisor. It was a pretty good-sized hit in 1973, spawned a sequel, Future World, spawned a television series that didn't last very long, Beyond Westworld, and has been remade into a television series, Westworld, on HBO. So, John, I understand this is your first time seeing the film?
I finished the movie about 20 minutes before we started recording today, actually. I'd always been aware of Westworld, but I'd never seen it. I felt like I had read enough about it and seen enough little bits and pieces of it here and there in discussions of other movies that I pretty well had a good feeling of what it was about. So it was something that was always on the list, but that I'd never actually gotten around to watching. So when you had mentioned possibly doing it for the show, I bought the Blu-ray, and it's a really nice looking Blu-ray, by the way. Really nice, handsome image, very very filmic image, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Just from the beginning, I mean, it feels so far ahead of its time. You know, you look around and I think of all my nieces and nephews who have their heads in electronic devices all the time, and you know, the idea of being able to go someplace that lets you be somebody else and, you know, make all of your wildest dreams and, you know, maybe even some of your worst impulses come true it's a pretty potent idea, and it's a nice. I did not know going into this that Michael Crichton wrote and directed it, so it's a nice precursor to the amusement park gone bad, Jurassic Park, that he would have great success with later on. And I think the movie starts really strongly. It does kind of fizzle a little bit toward the end. There are great ideas all the way through and great visuals all the way through. I just feel like the pacing and the urgency, both of those things kind of fall off as the film progresses, but you know, lots of interesting visuals. I think it's very efficient and effective in establishing very early on that James Brolin's character is the only person who's equipped to survive this if things go bad. And I thought near the beginning, you know, if this movie has any guts whatsoever, it will dispatch him early and leave all of these other people like Dick Van Patten and Richard Benjamin's character, who may not be quite as equipped to have to deal with the fallout. I thought that was really, really interesting. Yul Brynner is very, very effective as kind of a proto-Terminator type character, and I don't know, I enjoyed it quite a bit, despite how much it just kind of loses a lot of energy and momentum by the end, much like my description of it just did. What do you guys think?
I agree completely with like all the references you made, everything. Yeah, that's kind of how I saw it. I've seen it twice now, and I think I liked it more the second time. But I was always under the impression that this was based off a book that he wrote. But then until recently, I thought it was adapted from a book, but it was actually just an original screenplay, and it was his directorial debut. But I like his movie adaptations, or like the adaptations that are done from his work quite a bit. And this one I like up until the robots go crazy, I think. I'm not sure why I don't like that. I just don't find it as interesting as maybe just exploring the park or the different parks. But
right.
Yeah. But I'm curious to see what Nat thinks, because Nat has read a lot of his novels.
I know Robert's also a big Michael Crichton fan, but I was just going to say, in reference to something you were saying earlier, John, that James Brolin, and I'm going to have to, if I say Josh at any point, you know, please forgive me, but you said he's the one who's best equipped to deal with the park. But it's funny because it's kind of that cockiness, or like that expectation that nothing will go wrong, that ultimately leads to him getting killed. And
yes.
Again, I mean, that's like the big, I guess, thematic connection between Jurassic Park. I mean, obviously the whole idea of like the park breaking down, but it's that overconfidence in the competency of the park setup that's really, like, I think what Crichton really wants to get at here. But I'm you know, and it is Jurassic Park too, like right down to the line "spared no expense," which I think they pops up when they're traveling in the tram to the park. And as far as kind of overall impressions of the movie, this is my second time seeing it, and I'm kind of in agreement as well. The more action, the more action oriented it becomes, I agree. The less interesting it becomes. I think the more Crichton kind of runs out of ideas. I think it's like right up. I think he's really playing around with a lot of cinematic techniques, like starting off with the commercial for Westworld, and having it in kind of like that the television aspect ratio, and then opening it up for the film. The shot of back on the tram, like the reflection of the landscape in the aviator glasses, which I think might be stolen a little bit from Cool Hand Luke, but it's something. Great. Yeah, it looks fantastic, and so fantastic he uses it twice. But and I think too, when you get to see like areas of the control room, or like the guts of the park, especially like where you see them repairing the robots, and I love that they have horses on the operating tables there as well. But I think there's like a little hint of Andromeda Strain, which I think was a couple of years before. For that, but it's really interesting because I don't think of Crichton really as being a director, but I think he does a really competent job until like again the last 20 minutes or so where it becomes action, and it's like I would rather explore the procedural aspect of this, but I have to do some sort of action, so I'm just going to do everything in slow motion. But
I don't think the direction was bad in the film. I just don't think I just think on a story level the last third wasn't that great. I'm not, and I don't know where you could go with it either. So it's not like I have a better idea. But I thought his direction was pretty good.
I think it does get repetitive though, with the slow motion, like constantly.
Yeah, I guess I don't mind. Well, I don't mind that, but like compared to other first time directors in this period, guys that had maybe a lot more experience in TV or stage, like he's just coming off writing novels, and I think he did a pretty good job. Yeah,
no, I'm not, like, again, I really like what he does in the first parts of it, and I kind of like him overall as a director. I haven't seen Coma, but I have seen The Great Train Robbery, and I really like that as well. Like, there's some really, really great set pieces in that, and it does get a little, like, winking at the camera, but...
Well, I
like his music choices too.
What's that?
I like his music choices in this one too.
Oh yeah,
yeah. The piano with the percussion that kind of sounds like rattlesnakes. And again, I mean, the music is kind of propulsive in those scenes, and that kind of rattlesnake-ish element to it kind of makes you feel like, oh gosh, things are really going to really pick up here. It's really dangerous, but what's on screen just never feels that dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's true. Well, it has a campy feel to it, which is kind of how I feel about the TV series too. Which I'm not sure if that's intended or not, but just the idea like of just being aware that this is a theme park, so all of the performances and everything just has kind of like a weird, like not like wink at the camera factor, but like a really goofy.
Well, it's like
to me.
Yeah, it's like an early kind of meta fiction because it knows, it kind of follows all those generic tropes of like westerns, but it's also commenting on, because the guests, that's what they expect. Like, it's, should we go help out with the bank robbery? It's like, we got to make that 9 p.m. bank robbery, but no, let's use the prostitutes. Also, probably should note that there's a great Simpsons episode, the Itchy and Scratchy Land one, that's based on this as well.
Yeah, my understanding is that Crichton specifically told his camera crew to make sure it looked like cliches when they were doing all the cliche things. So there is kind of a meta level to it, where he is kind of winking at the camera. He's commenting on the action by how he films it. And I think that's a sign of actually a pretty good director. I mean, I've read a lot of Michael Crichton, and Michael Crichton certainly never sweated over the prose of his books. But he is a really good storyteller, and he has good ideas. I certainly, you can see this as a ground zero for much of his later work. There's certainly tech paranoia throughout Crichton's career, and that plays right into Westworld. I mean, I think it's the one thing it and I'll say this: I really enjoy the chase sequence at the end. I know it's. There are ideas that are left unexplored, and certainly the time period of the time allowed in a television show allows you to peer into those nooks and crannies. But I think it's a nice, quickly paced 90 minutes of entertainment with some ideas in there, and you can do a lot less for science fiction, especially from the 1970s. Especially when everybody wants to.
No, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, especially when there were a lot of people just picked up on the intellectual portions of Kubrick and forgot how to entertain in the process too.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's not done bad or anything, but I just would have liked a different, just a different third act, and that's my only complaint. It's not that he does it poorly. Like there's maybe a little bit too much slow motion, but I really and some parts I really liked was when you got to see the image of the mustache character guy running away through Yul Brynner's eyes, where it was pixelated.
Right,
Yeah.
And I thought that was a great use of
Turn around, over here.
Yeah, but it actually reminds me of the sort of final part in Predator.
Predator, yeah.
where like you're going back and forth between the Predators, like
vision.
pixelated vision, and
Yeah. The
and I
infrared
really like
vision.
that part of Predator. Yeah, so that there's parts that I like about it. I also don't really like that the movie's called Westworld, but there's 3 different worlds. I would rather just be one, theme park. But that's a really minor criticism, just because you don't really get to see too much of Roman worlds or medieval world, but like you see a bit. But I would have just rather have it just stuck in, in the Westworld park.
Or if they were going to have the other, obviously they built the sets, they made the costumes.
Yeah.
I was kind of expecting this massive brawl in the Wild West town with the Roman gladiators and the medieval knights. I thought, okay, this is gonna be crazy, where every kind of robot from all these other, it's all gonna just go crazy right here, and it just really kind of didn't happen that way. They sort of ran through those other sets a little bit, but really, I guess I was expecting something a little more bonkers for the finale.
Yeah,
because you could have had all 3 of the worlds clashing in in some place, right, or whatever. Yeah,
You have like a chariot running down the town roads in Westworld, and a bunch of cowboys chasing after it, and then a knight chasing after them.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was kind of expecting to happen, and we just really kind of didn't get there.
Yeah, it's like they just rated the MGM costume collection.
It's getting to the point where it's going to be just like Blazing Saddles at the like this ending. It's just going to be Blazing Saddles.
yeah.
I mean, I think you kind of know that we're going to get to a robot revolution, because I think that is inevitable in this type of story. I mean, they're not going for an Asimovian exploration of the robot psychology. There are no robo-psychologists in there. These are just basically patching them up, putting them back together, and sending them out there.
Yeah.
I suppose this traces all the way back to Rossum's Universal Robots by Chuck Wright or Carol Kopic, where you have the robots, which are synthetic organic beings in that version, but they ultimately are abused slaves who finally revolt against human oppressors. So I think that's in there, although they really do not hint that the robots here have much or any self-awareness. I mean, there's this kind of blank stare with the lights glowing in them, and a synthesizer chord is going on, but that's about all that they do to explore that idea.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I think that's maybe where my complaint lies, in that I'm not really comparing it to the TV series in this sense, because I saw this movie before the TV series. But if it was something more of like a robot revolution, like let's say, kind of similar to like that one Planet of the Apes movie, where it's all leading up to an ape revolution and they're like planning and stuff like that. Like if the film maybe spent less time going to the other worlds and then setting up this robot revolt, then I think I would have liked the sort of action third act a bit more. But I'm not really criticizing the movie for what it did. I'm just saying that's kind of what I would have preferred with this setup and then with this setting. But sorry, go ahead, John. Yeah.
I was going to say too that I think that the movie does a pretty decent job of showing, kind of human grossness and lustfulness in how a lot of these robots are treated thankfully without getting too exploitative about it. The king having the chambermaid in his room, and he's obviously very disappointed that he doesn't get to take advantage of her, because that's the game he's playing, and that's the game that he's starting. So you actually see that punished in the film. So it's there, but they really don't get a lot into it. And I agree with you that they just really don't get that far into showing any kind of emotion in the robots or necessarily why they're revolting. They just sort of do.
Well, I don't know if maybe I don't know, not so much like nitpicking, but I think I get a sense from Crichton though that it's less like the technology being bad or becoming sentient or like it becoming a superior force to overtake its creators, and more attacking hubris or just the idea that humans can have control. And again, that's Jurassic Park, but I think that's also a lot of other works of Crichton science fiction. Like, it's not necessarily that the thing that people create is bad, but it's their idea of maintaining control over that ultimately is the bad thing. And I think that does kind of work here, because again, like we've been saying, the robots don't tend to have that much in the way of emotion. They work very, very well for what they're programmed to do. Just just that we don't have as much control over them.
Yeah.
As we should.
Yeah, I mean, it's always reminded when I read Crichton of the lines from William Butler Yeats' The Second Coming. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. We go further, the blood dim tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. And that pretty much describes Westworld and
How long
Jurassic
were waiting
Park.
to drop that gem, Robert?
Oh, yeah. That was deep.
Yeah.
I have to go smoke a cigarette now.
I got to wear all black and put a beret on.
I'll make my contribution to the pretension jar, but I thought that was a perfect summary of Crichton's view of how the systems fail and what happens in both Westworld and Jurassic Park and most of his other.
I think Sphere would be another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe Andromeda Strain. But I don't know. I kind of wish, and I get the sense too that like originally I've never read the screenplay for this, but I would imagine there's more of a procedural aspect to it, or more focusing on like the day-to-day workings of the park.
Yeah. My understanding is that they filmed a bunch of that and then they just cut it to make it just kind of be a nice, quick ride instead of an exploration of it. So. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because that would have made it more like Robert Wise's adaptation of Andromeda Strain, which is like complete procedure, and it's good.
That's the book too.
Yeah. And that's a good movie too. Like you might think it's boring, but as soon as you watch it, it's actually really interesting, And
I really just like it.
It's a good one. It's actually and like the miniseries they made of it is horrible, but the original movie that Robert Wise did of Crichton's book was awesome, and it was all procedure scenes basically.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody know what of the 13th Warrior Crichton reshot? I know that he shot a lot of John McTiernan's stuff, which was based on his Eaters of the Dead novel. I know that he did he did reshoots on that, but I never knew what of that he did and what McTiernan did.
Yeah, if I were to watch it now, I'd be able to probably tell.
Yeah,
because I know McTiernan well, but I don't know off by hand.
It's a movie that's long overdue for a Blu-ray release. I know it's much maligned, but I enjoyed it for what it was.
Certainly better than Congo.
Hey, let's not say something we might regret here.
I don't think I'll regret that.
I think that a lot of the Crichton adaptations you have to have soft spots for. I have a soft spot for Disclosure and Rising Sun and Congo, but I have to say I haven't seen 13th Warrior. But.
I do have a soft spot for 13th Warrior.
Yeah, me too.
Even if it's some sort of loose reworking of Beowulf.
Yeah, I don't think it makes a lot of sense, to be honest, and the casting is really bad.
The Vikings are cast really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but not Antonio Banderas.
I think he acquits himself well for what it is, but...
What do you think of, just since we're talking about other genres that Crichton work, what do you think about mixing a Western with science fiction? I know you've seen noir mixed with science fiction this year with Alphaville, so how does a Western in a science fiction setting mesh? Or do they mesh, or is it the tension interesting, or is it there is a synergy at work here?
I've got a long answer, so I'll let someone else go first.
I love it. I say mix anything. If you can figure out a way to make it work and a way to make it interesting, then mix anything. I mean, everybody, it's talked about by one of the people interviewed at the beginning in the commercial. So when you're a little kid, you just point at a guy and you go bang bang, and the other guy falls down. It's like everybody has in their mind an idea of what the Wild West is like, and it's often what we've seen on television. And as Robert mentioned earlier, it's nice to know that he intentionally went for kind of showing everything as a cliche of what people have in their minds. Well, that's not how life really was back then. It was a lot harder. It was a lot more dangerous. So to have this technology driving this watered down impression of what life was like, you just know that there's trouble lurking. That the people there, and I love, for example, Dick Van Patten. They put these the big glasses on him. I think he was so good with his body language and his facial expressions. Even without the glasses, he would be a perfect example of somebody who's you're just not ready for this. You might think you're ready for it, but you're not ready for it. Or how Richard Benjamin's character on the tram is talking about, oh yeah, I want to do that thing with the gun.
Yeah.
It's like what's that called? It's like he knows he wants to do it. He knows it's awesome, but he doesn't even know what it's called. And so to me, I felt a sense of dread from the beginning that, okay, these people are walking into something that they have no idea what they're getting into, and the second that things start to go bad, which they're going to, these people are going to be in a lot of trouble. So for me, that mixing of genres worked, and I would have liked to have seen a lot more of it. You guys expressed some great ideas of chariots coming through the streets at the end. I was really expecting this Gonzo ending where everything just comes together in the streets of the Wild West. So I was actually, I think, hoping for a little more genre mixing than we got.
I actually like that main character, whatever his name is, or actor or character name, like the guy with the mustache. He has some really funny lines, like because he's really giddy at some points, and that one point when I forget what he was doing, but it's like after he did something really fun, and then he was like to his friend, and he's like, I really like this place.
Yeah.
Yeah. My understanding is Richard Benjamin had a great time making it because he's just not an actor that gets cast in westerns. So this was actually part of the fantasy was him actually getting to be in the western.
If you do, you really expect from the beginning that, okay, I know what's going to happen. Brolin is going to be the badass who conquers the day. His funny buddy is going to get killed, and he's going to have to, and I really love how they kind of, broke that expectation and did something that was a lot more interesting and a lot more fun with it.
Yeah, there's something about manhood involved with Richard Benjamin's character, too, of proving his manhood. I mean, he's coming off a divorce, and apparently his wife took him to the cleaners, and there's something of the 70s starting to explore the idea of non-traditional manhood or proving your worth. I mean, Duel is another example of a film of this time where you got kind of the nebbishy guy that has to confront something beyond his experience, and I think that's a nice trope that works real well here.
Well, and also that Peckinpah film with Dustin Hoffman. What's it called?
Straw
Dogs. Yeah, Straw Dogs. Right, where like the little like the quiet guy goes nuts at the end.
Mm-hmm. Although I will say, when he saves, quote unquote, saves Josh Brolin from James Brolin, damn it, did it, from Yul Brynner. He shoots him, Yul Brynner falls out the window, and then he does the "Was he bothering you?" line. It's like, okay, that's a pretty good line. And then he immediately follows it up with "He won't anymore." It's like, oh man, come on. You had the perfect one-liner, and then you had to go and spoil it.
I actually like that scene a lot because the slow motion makes it more funny to me because he's like he's in the towel, right? And then he kicks the door open, he's like a little skinny guy, and then he just blows him away. It's all done in slow motion. It was funny.
Yeah, I felt like somebody yelling at a horror movie at the end when the woman's chained up and he's like, check her hands, check her hands. He's yelling at the screen,
which is weird because you think of that as being something that will become bigger, like or will have like more significance or impact later in the movie, and it doesn't quite get there. Mm-hmm. Like it, and actually, like the rattlesnake was another thing where I had forgotten this from seeing it again, but I'm like, oh yeah, because rattlesnakes are cold-blooded, so the guns wouldn't be able to tell. And then it's like, no, it's a robot rattlesnake. It's like, total missed opportunity there. Like, yeah, nature finds a way, and yet.
See, I never would have thought of the cold-blooded thing. That's really smart.
Yeah, I mean, neither.
Yeah. But I mean, Crichton, come on, Crichton. This is you should have known better. But
yeah, well, he does go for the Carrie ending before Carrie, so he gets credit for that.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true. But I was wondering too, like, if this movie had a little bit more cultural impact. That if in Clerks, when they have one of their discussions, like Randall would ask, how much do you think the guy who has to clean up the prostitute robots makes? Mm-hmm. So I was wondering that the entire time too. So, like.
Just throw them out and then make new ones.
Yeah, do they just have replaceable parts like down there, or like
just incinerate them?
Yeah, exactly. And I love how the guy Alan Oppenheimer is like going around checking out all the progress. And there's the one, that has like the faulty unit, and he's like, "Oh, just move, like redesign the entire thing, just move it up in the cavity more." I'm like, can you do that? I was wondering if Robert was just like having a brain aneurysm because of something like that. Like you just have to re-engineer the entire robot.
Well, if it was a guy checking like a series of sewer systems rather than robots, that probably Robert would.
Yeah, robots are out of my specialty.
But I imagine that would just moving an entire like main CPU like up or in a different location.
Just shove it up there.
Yeah, require a pretty big overhaul or redesign of that robot.
Well, there's a lot of space inside those robots, especially inside the head.
Yeah, it actually is. Yeah,
yes, especially for the prostitute robots. But hey. But Western and sci-fi, I do think that there is a lot of opportunity there, or at least like just with. And I'm not a fan of Cowboys and Aliens, but I think there is a lot of overlap in themes of like, carving out your destiny or new opportunities and, kill or be killed and, doing the right thing without knowing consequences. But I mean, I'm kind of on John's side here too, that I think you can find a lot of common themes between a lot of genres. And I think, at least in America, like so much, the Western's been explored so much that I think there's a lot of ground you can still cover. There's still a lot of opportunities there, or it's been expanded to such an extent that you really could include or add in like so many other different things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually don't think this is a Western and a sci-fi hybrid, and I'm only saying that because it doesn't really have like any, like, unlike other genres, the Western had a really specific narrative structure, or had like several specific ones, whereas something like sci-fi never really did in movies. And I think that if anything, this is more of like sci-fi and then a horror film in the end, but it's not that horrific. I think so like what I mean is that the narrative structure, or how the characters are positioned in that structure, it doesn't really seem like a Western to me. Obviously, like the set decoration and the costumes are Western, but I think there's other movies that have maybe taken the Western plot, or like a certain Western plot structure, like let's say like Assault on Precinct 13 would be one where it sort of transplants a Western into a police crime film, or like, and this is probably going to be a lot of John Carpenter's appreciation for Howard Hawks, but even They Live feels more like a Western than this film. And I also think that Walter Hill, I haven't seen all of his movies, but I remember him saying that he tries to make a Western with every film because he likes how simplistic and straightforward Western plots are, and how straightforward the characters are. And so I'm not sure if this is a Western sci-fi hybrid. I think, like, superficially it is, but...
Well, it still has the final showdown between the hero and the gunslinger.
Yeah, but that feels more like a sort of sci-fi horror showdown than like a Western showdown.
Well, they do have the big man and fire thing at the end, which is certainly similar to the thing from Another World.
Yeah. But even that, yeah, like the ending feels more like...
And he does come back from the dead, I guess. And
and it feels more like, anticipating Terminator or anticipating Michael Myers with, like, Halloween movies, like, like the scary monster guy who keeps coming back from the dead and keeps trying to kill you, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. I did think it was ridiculous when Richard Benjamin ran out into the hallway after just burning some of the skin off of Yul Brynner's face. It was just like, well, I burned a little bit of skin off of the robot. I've clearly won, and it's okay to stand here in this hallway.
Yeah, he's a funny character. He's
very much so.
Yeah, I mean, what do we think of Yul Brynner in this one? I mean, he is clearly trading on his past Western filmmaking to be an iconic character here, or at least the look of it. It certainly looks like he stepped out of the Magnificent Seven.
Yeah,
dressed all in black.
I thought he was fine. Yeah, like he's got a really commanding face, and he does look intimidating. So that's what he's supposed to do. He doesn't have any lines, right?
I thought he was fantastic.
He gives some lines.
Yeah.
Well, he antagonizes him at the bar.
Oh, in the beginning, yeah.
I love it. It just asked about his bib and his mama.
Yeah.
The way he walks in and sits down at the bar, it's his physical acting is so good there because it's half robotic. I mean, there's a little bit of kind of a robotic feel to his movements, but it's also this is kind of like deliberate tough guy thing as well. And he's emasculating Richard Benjamin's character before he even opens his mouth. And when he does open his mouth, it's this this low, deep, modulated voice that's just and we you guys had mentioned earlier before how giddy Richard Benjamin is through the whole movie, and I love that giddiness about him. But it's just so nice to see that contrasted with just how manly and cold Brynner's character is, and I do appreciate that, as Robert had mentioned, in the context of kind of coming out of the Magnificent Seven. I mean, there was a lot of talk in a while back about doing a remake of Westworld with Arnold Schwarzenegger in the Yul Brynner role, which would have been maybe a little bit too meta Terminator-esque. But for somebody to kind of portray that same sort of that sort of unstoppable force that the Terminator is, I think he was a pretty good. Choice.
I think Danny DeVito would have been a better choice. I mean that more seriously than you may think, though, because if he's a gunslinger, he's going to be a lot harder to hit if it's Danny DeVito.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, it's like when you play Oddjob in the GoldenEye game for 64.
Yeah, exactly.
DeVito's had such a resurgence on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He is fearless on that show. He will do or say anything.
That's Danny DeVito.
That was a really funny show.
His entire career, though, is like playing the most depraved characters imaginable. But yeah, I do really like Yul Brynner's character and just his performance in this movie as well. Like, again, back when he's trying to antagonize anybody, and he chooses Richard Benjamin, like, I mean, you can tell, you can kind of see the gears whirring where he lays out generic gender neutral threat, no response, slight delay, and then James Brolin's like, come on, still hesitating, and then he follows up with, go get a bib, your mama. Yeah,
That's so great.
Yeah, and it's great because, like, I mean, I can totally believe that that's like a robot in his program. Okay, if the person doesn't respond after this, so you follow up with this line, and you can't, I guess, get too personal because you won't know too much of the specific person that you're antagonizing's backstory. So you kind of go with, like, slightly greater but still a little bit more neutral threats there. But maybe I'm overthinking it, but yeah, I do like him.
Yeah, I mean, you can also see the gears working in Richard Benjamin's head. It's do I do this or do I not do it? And what's a good comeback line?
And he does not have good comeback lines.
So, do I do this or do I ask more questions about, well, I get lunch on my own. Well, what restaurants do you have?
Yeah, exactly. I like too, where like they're having dinner at the hotel, and like the proprietor at the hotel, like somebody brings up, where can I find loose women in this town? She's like, we don't discuss that at the table. And I think Richard Benjamin says something, our apologies, Mom, and then she says, there's a man of good breeding. I will say also, I don't like the tagline. Boy, have we got a vacation for you. That's a little cheesy. And
then
the
they
guy,
come back to it. Yeah,
but the guy who there's no banner that falls down at the end, over Yul Brynner's robot corpse saying, "Boy, if we got a vacation for you." But the guy, like the scientist or technician who pulls up in the cart when the robots are going crazy, like that guy is pretty bad though. Where he's like, "Oh my God, the gunslinger's after you. There's no escape. He's if he wants you dead, you'll be dead."
We obviously had fun watching it, so that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the movie too, and I think there are a lot of really neat ideas here. Not just in science fiction, but also in metafiction, and just kind of playing around with people's expectations of their experience in Westworld is informed by movies that they've watched, and I would imagine it pretty much is the same in what we get to see of medieval world, and we don't get to see Roman world. I guess there'd be a lot more nudity in that one, although we do get a little bit of nudity. But it is interesting just commenting on all the tourists basically trying to live out fantasies from the movies.
Right.
Yeah, I would like to see some I, Claudius style plotting going on in Roman world.
Yes. Yeah. Or at least, like, if there's a Brian Blessed plot, I want one.
Okay, I think we're just about wrapped up on this one. I guess the final question is, which if you had to choose one of the parks to visit, which one would it be? Why don't you go first, Cody?
Westworld. I don't know. No real reason. I just don't like being way back in time without, like, proper hygiene and stuff like that.
Is that Shep?
Sorry.
Or is that...
No, that's my dog, sorry.
Nat?
That's tough. Maybe Roman world, just because we don't get to see it, and I would be interested to see what are the big differences between that and, say, medieval world.
I think
Loose morals, yeah.
I love one of my favorite lines in the entire movie was that a lusty treat for the senses, the sensual relaxed morality. Sensual relaxed morality. That's hilarious.
John?
I would probably Medieval World. I think that turkey leg looked pretty delicious. But I would probably be most interested in sneaking over to Westworld and seeing what this other restaurant runs. I think any vacation I go on, my first question on is, what do they have to eat there? So,
Yeah. Is it all inclusive?
How about you, Robert?
I would probably go to Westworld. I think having whiskey, even as rock gut whiskey, appeals to me, and riding horses, and I think foiling a bank robbery sounds pretty fun. I like Richard Benjamin's go, but maybe we should go foil that bank robbery.
Would you be the sheriff, Robert?
Oh, no, I think that's too confining, but I would certainly be a white hat.
Yeah. I wonder about that too. So, like, when the day ends, is everything reprogrammed? Like, so they take all the robots who've been killed and then set them up. So, like, does the day start anew, or like if you take over an occupation, like the one guy said he was sheriff for a week, then like how does that work? Like some parts of it like kind of play the same role every day, and then other parts of it like you have a continuity like from day to day.
Well, the TV series gets into that
Yeah.
big time. In the movie, I don't know.
Thanks, Cody.
Well, I guess that is unexplored territory. That's something like a TV show can't explore. But strikes me as a segue. Because I do want to talk about the TV
Feeling a
show.
segue. What are our ratings for the movie?
Have we ever done ratings?
No, but I think we should start.
Okay.
We should. We
Are we
should
doing
do one
stars or
podcast
grades?
where we retroactively rate everything we've watched.
I will say it's a sensual, relaxed moral treat.
Yeah, yeah, it is relaxing. I actually watched this today while I was in the tub.
Were you pulling a Richard Benjamin and scrubbing your feet?
Yeah.
I was actually.
He looks so happy doing that.
Yeah, first like bath in like 10 years, so it's pretty nice. I would give it a 3 out of 5.
Okay, I'll give it a 3.5 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
If they had a Roman world plot, I probably would have bumped it up to 4. But
I'm gonna go 3.75.
I give it a 5 out of 5 for the idea. I think the idea is fantastic, and then probably 3.5 overall for the execution.
All right.
okay,
Cool.
Okay, now I understand that you have not seen the HBO series, John.
I have not.
Okay, we'll probably get into spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoilers, I think this is probably a good time to say goodbye. But it was a pleasure having you on.
It was an honor being on, guys. Thank you so much for allowing my rambling to interrupt your regularly scheduled podcast. I really do appreciate it.
Oh no, and you've got a nice voice.
And before you go, John, where can we find your website?
You can find me at johnbierly.com, Bierly, that I post links to all of the things that I'm on, and do also on Twitter at John Bierly. And thank you guys again very much for having me on. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to listening to your discussion of the series as soon as I've had a chance to catch up with it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's an interesting series. I'll give that as a preview of their discussion.
All right. Thanks so much, guys.
And you can tell
Thank
Jonathan Nolan is certainly influenced by his brother.
Yes.
Oh, a sick burn.
Okay, well, thank you, John. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
All right, let's get down to business. Get down to business on Westworld TV series, HBO.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Have you guys seen the whole thing?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
How long is it? Is it 10 episodes or 13?
10.
10.
10. Okay. Yeah.
And it could have been like 7, I think.
I think
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. So, like, what are your overall thoughts on the series?
I can go first because I probably won't have the most. I will not have the most to say. Yeah, I think the concept is perfect for a television adaptation.
Exactly.
And I can't think of that many other bases that I would sort of want them to cover, at least like, just focusing specifically on Westworld. But that said, I just feel it's been going in circles. Like
or a maze, you could say.
Yeah, and
right?
But I don't think that's intentional. Like,
I know, I don't think so either.
that would be the perfect metaphor. But I mean, and it's also, I think at the end of the series of the last episode, there was nothing that I did not expect from the first episode. There was nothing at the end of the first episode that I did not expect. I feel like everyone kind of knows what's going to happen going into it, or at least like one episode in, and it doesn't disappoint those expectations, but it doesn't really elevate the explanations or expectations, and it doesn't seem like it really goes as far beyond as I think this amount of time and this amount of money and could offer. I feel there's a lot of opportunities that are kind of lost.
Oh yeah. I think your point about that it could be 7 episodes long rather than 10 is really obvious once you see the last episode where they wrap everything up.
Yeah,
quickly.
With a big info dump.
Yeah, and they wrap it up quickly, and it's like wow, like you guys spend a lot of time with William fucking around in the bushes, for like 3 episodes, basically going nowhere. Not that I minded those scenes. I don't like that actress very much, Evan Rachel Wood, but I think her character's okay, and I don't like James Marsden as an actor either. But I actually didn't mind his. Although he's pretty much useless, like as a character, and maybe that's what the show is trying to do, is trying to fire expectations. But you get the impression that he's going to be a major character, and then he just becomes someone who is just following someone around, or is being made to follow someone around. Mm-hmm. And he really has a weak part once you know what like those memories are flashing back, towards. Yeah. I'm speaking kind of cryptically here I guess we'll get into spoilers.
Yeah.
Robert, what are your thoughts on the series overall?
I think I'm pretty much with you. I mean, it looks great. I think the cast is very good, and I think the ideas that they're exploring are ideas worth exploring, but I think that trying to make it all a mystery puzzle box is kind of whatever happened to clearly defined characters with clear goals and motivations, instead of just keeping us all at arm's length. I think that's part of the thing that I felt kind of at arm's length to the film or to the story at points, and I felt that maintaining the mystery sometimes came before just telling a good episodic hour of television.
Yeah, I agree there.
But I mean, and I think if you can just bring the robots back anytime you want, it kind of removes the stakes from the characters. I guess that they could be decommissioned and lobotomized, and that's the only stakes there are for the robot characters. But it's and there's certainly not much for physical stakes for the human characters until possibly till next season.
Yeah.
But I mean, at its best though, I thought it was really good. I thought it was really intelligent. I thought it looked great. So I certainly flew through the hours, and I can. And I think Jonathan Nolan's kind of Christopher Nolan chili remove kind of made all the copious nudity not feel salacious. And I guess if people want to know, there are more dongs in this story than anything I've seen since Reanimator.
Boom.
Which is an interesting choice on their part. But I mean, I think the robots are the more interesting character, but they seem to fall into loops, and most of the characters behind the scenes aren't that interesting, with the exception of Bernard and Anthony Hopkins Lang. But Anthony Hopkins Lang has always has this mysterious remove on him, so you have to guess what he's actually thinking. So, which is kind of
I know,
interesting, kind of frustrating.
He's always like, taking stuff with stride, and we're just like, okay, what is he going to do now when this person is, obviously trying to screw him over? But he's always so comfortable, And he's always just like, oh, okay, yeah, and then that'll be fine.
It's like the watered down version of his character from The Edge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's what I think. I mean, I think everything fits together basically in the end. I just think dramatically it wasn't always smooth sailing getting there. So, and I think they missed some opportunities to actually explore these characters.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, now that they have all their cards on the table, it'll be better going into season 2, and they can actually get into depth.
I don't know. It feels too like every character just had one secret, or they were built around just like one secret or one big revelation that they wanted to build up to, and they spent all of the time with that character, just kind of building up to that and putting. This did remind me like a lot of Lost.
Yeah,
like where there would be a good deal of filler in between it, and just kind of screwing around with the characters, like the whole Bernard revelation. I don't know. It doesn't seem
which
that.
One though? Which one? Because he's the only one that has 2.
Yeah,
right?
The first one.
Yeah, the first one. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they built it up so much that when it is revealed, it's okay. I guess when everything is just focusing on like a mystery, and I kind of get a sense that like presupposes you're going to be blown away by this event or this revelation. I don't know. It just doesn't seem as impactful.
Well, it seems like they put all their eggs in that basket, like in just these revelations, and put a lot less focus on writing, good character moments or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping that
I didn't see a lot of those things coming. I saw what I did see coming was that William was the Man in Black.
Yeah.
And I did see coming, but not too early. That was later. And I did see coming. This was maybe earlier though. Was that Evan Rachel Wood's character Dolores was actually the
Wyatt?
Wyatt, yeah. Like he was that, or she was that, fictitious program story code or whatever is going on there, I kind of saw that. I did not see what. So the first revelation when you find out that Bernard's a robot, I didn't see that coming.
Spoilers.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, let's just say everybody that we're into spoilers. I mean, I don't think that's a huge spoiler because when you have a story like this, obviously some human character has to be a robot.
I know, but that's one of the only things that I didn't see coming, And then maybe once that happened, I was getting tipped off to more things.
Yeah.
I also didn't see coming. This isn't really a big deal, but the fact that Maeve's character, is that her name?
Yes.
Andy Newton's character. So it's basically implied, like heavily implied, I thought, that her basically revolt and her increased consciousness was part of her loop, her story loop. Right?
Right.
Yeah,
or at least, maybe not the loop, but it was programmed in there by Lang, by Hopkins.
It was in her, it was like a new trajectory for her character, was to basically extend her shenanigans beyond the park and into the background scenes to what I'm assuming it was meant to distract people so that he could, plan his big Godfather moment where he kills everyone.
Yeah.
And one thing, because I was watching this with my girlfriend, and she was reading, all the crazy fan theories and conspiracy theories and stuff, because she likes doing that and spoiling stuff for herself. She read one where she thinks that Robert, is it Robert Lang? Is that the guy's name? Anthony Hopkins' character?
It's Lang for certain. Let me pull up the Wikipedia here.
Whatever. So
isn't it Ford?
Yeah, I thought it was Ford.
Anthony Hopkins is Robert Ford, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, Robert Ford. Okay,
yeah.
Sorry. Anyway, so she was saying, that a lot of people think that he made a robot of himself to be in that spot in the final scene so that he could get killed. And then
that I don't know. because
Yeah,
I
that I don't know
didn't
either.
figure.
Mhm.
Just from a more production standpoint, I wouldn't know or think that Anthony Hopkins would sign on for another season.
Yeah.
Well, not as a. I don't think he would be as an everyday regular, but I could see him showing up for special occasions.
He was good though. He was one of my favorite actors in this. Like, and that's not a surprise or anything.
Yeah.
Obviously Ed Harris was really good too. But
I loved Ed Harris in this.
Yeah.
Any flashbacks I didn't see any call-outs to Walker, but
But yeah, with him dressed all in black, it's recalled Walker.
But he's
he
one of
didn't-
the only actors who looks more foreboding and imposing as he gets older and scarier as he gets older.
yeah.
Like, and I don't mean like in as scary as in like in an ugly way, like whoa, like like how like ugly or scary Kirk Douglas looks now, but but I mean like he looks tougher, like he looks like a scary dude still, even though he's probably like 79 or something. I don't know.
Yeah, where like in The Right Stuff, he's cuddly, and you just want to give him a big hug. But
Yeah,
I think I imagine that they're kind of going for a Yul Brynner type look for his character as well.
Yeah, I think so too.
so
And they wanted
this
to reverse expectations that he is
Yeah.
dressed in
Yeah.
black, but he's a guest, not a robot.
well, exactly, and like it's not clear to me how like what the showrunners are thinking. Like, did they expect everyone to have seen the first movie, or
I don't
are
think so.
they? Yeah, right.
But they
So,
do
like,
they do have some
But
Easter
they do
eggs
have
in-
little Easter eggs. Yeah, they
Yeah.
do have little things.
Like Delos and
Yeah.
Yeah,
There is
but
a
even, like,
Yul Brynner looking robot decommissioned down there in the cellar
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Just out of focus, but if you know what you're looking for, it's there.
Yeah, if you know what his penis looks like, you can find it. No, but even like the two young guys that is revealed to be like Ed Harris's character's past, like those guys kind of are modeled after the main characters in Westworld, right?
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, like to an extent.
And they
Like,
certainly
you have,
say
like, the
something like
one-
there's a lot to do here.
Yeah, and like you have the one guy, William, who is the noob, and then you have his stupid friend who's the experienced guy, and then I didn't mind their story. I thought it took a little long to get to where it was going to when William gets matched up with Dolores. And that's where I thought the series really let go of James Marsden's character, where he was kind of attached to Dolores, and then all of a sudden now he's just kind of wandering around, He was a captive of Ed Harris's character, and then he's back, and then he keeps having these memories of being in the cavalry, and then that gets reversed. Like those scenes with him, I didn't think were great. I'm not sure how you guys feel about that character, but
He could be interesting, but I agree that he wasn't given much to do this year. He certainly didn't have any of the gaining self-awareness arc that Maeve or Dolores had, and he seemed more stuck in the loop than with everybody else saying mysterious things to him without him being able to actually react to it.
no, yeah.
Yeah.
Like he's just he's just a fighter. That's all he really does.
It's fairly thankless for him. I mean, Thandie Newton got quite a bit to do. I think ultimately, and Evan Rachel Wood had a little less to do because a lot of her, she's just a damsel in the flashbacks, and she's just kind of wandering. But at least Thandie Newton actually had a agency and got to do something. Even if Ford was pulling the strings, ultimately, at least seemed like she was doing more, and she was at least aware of it and making choices. I mean, I would say that's part of the big problem is that not many of the characters end up making choices. They're kind of being pulled along by the demands of the plot or the programming or whatever's going on there. So I think that's part of the issues there. But I note that ultimately, probably not without design, that the African descended actors and women actors seem to be the ones that we're supposed to be most sympathetic for. So they're certainly playing the slave revolt angle in the series.
I'll tell you one thing I didn't like in terms of reveals that all happened in the last episode. Like once you find out what older William Man in Black is after, like, you know, his sort of drive to find the end of the maze, like it seems so stupid and futile, and I'll explain why. So he wants there to be stakes in Westworld, as in, like, he wants to be able to be killed if he's in a gunfight. Like, that's his goal, right? Is that cleared?
Yeah, pretty much. Or maybe not killed, but at least punished.
No, but he wants it to be real. Like, he wants it to be, like... So, if that's what he's after, why doesn't he just start going shooting people in the real world? Like, you know, like start a fight with a cop or something who has a gun that's loaded. Or, you know, whatever's in the future, laser guns, whatever, I don't know.
Well, I view him, he actually thinks he's the hero of this story, that he's going to lead the slaves to freedom. But I think they're kind of playing with the white savior trope here. At least that's how I read it.
I don't know. That seems way too intelligent for this crew. Don't you think, Nat? Like that doesn't seem plausible.
I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah. Well, he's dead, isn't he?
No, he just shot in the arm.
Yeah.
I think he's going to die.
I don't know. I think he owns the park. They're probably going to need hostages to negotiate a truce, because there's no reason that the military should just swoop in and destroy everything if there's no hostages or anything else.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, yeah.
I mean, I assume that there's going to be some sort of tenuous piece, so they have a story to tell. It's not going to be, they kill everybody, the military comes in, and it's over.
Yeah, and then it's another park that, 10 years later or something.
Or it's the robots going out to live in the real world, or I don't know. Do they would they have is there any speculation in terms of like showing medieval world or Roman world, or if they
show samurai world, or at least they show
there was a samurai world thing, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then that guy just brushed off saying, "Oh, that's complicated," or whatever he said, something like that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are certainly more parks. They do say Park 1 is Westworld, which certainly implies more. And they do so, the backstage area, Samurai World or Shogun World or whatever it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I say Star Wars World would be a money-making proposition.
Just have sex with Slave Leia all the time. It's weird, though. Like, a lot of people at my work watch this show and are really into it, but have never heard of the movie, and we're completely unaware that it's based on a movie at all, and much less that it's based on Michael Crichton idea.
Well, I'll tell you what, a lot of the 70s sci-fi films are a lot worse than the original Westworld, in my opinion, and so I think Westworld, the original movie, is kind of underseen, or has just been lost in the general consciousness,
I feel like the idea is there, like it's maybe Planet of the Apes, kind of like that, where a lot of people know the ending of it, but haven't seen the movie. Although I think more to your point, like it's just complete or general ignorance of the specific movie, but a familiarity with like the idea of like robot theme park and theme park taking over, or it's been just co-opted by Jurassic Park.
That too, or it's a lot of moments anticipated other movies, big moments like Terminator, and I don't know what else, but so it's just not as widely seen.
Yeah, and I certainly it's hard to. I mean, once you get the shadow of Star Wars kind of looms over all those early '70s science fiction ideas.
No, I know, but I'm not talking about Star Wars. I'm talking about other sci-fi.
Yeah, but that gathers them. That sucks all the oxygen out of the room. And
no, you're right. Yeah, and there's also Star Trek during this time.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, other than Planet of the Apes in 2001, I mean, it's. I don't know.
Well, a lot of people have seen Logan's Run. They've seen Silent Running.
Yeah. Or at least like heard of it.
Yeah, and they've seen
Soylent Green. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's one that's more heard of than watched.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, because when I watched it, I was like, well, this is a lot different than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, exactly.
It was actually pretty good, but
I mean, and I will say too, like I've been bad mouthing it, but I do enjoy the series and I do enjoy the performances and I do think it looks really great. And I guess I expect a little bit more from an HBO show, and that HBO shows, at least in my experience, tend to be a little bit better in allocating their time among multiple characters, like Game of Thrones, where you get like 5 minutes, but it's a good 5 minutes per episode for each character. And I hope Westworld evolves into something like that a little bit more,
or just maybe slim down the character list, and just figure out, hey, it works better with maybe a few less characters. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe
I'll say it's a series for me that I really enjoy when I'm watching it. Like I'm not distracted. I'm not like looking at the clock, or I'm not looking at my phone or anything like that. I'm really enjoying it. And then when I want to talk about it with someone, or when I think about it later, then I find problems with it. But as I'm watching it, I'm really enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
Even the last episode with all the reveals, I was like, oh, what's going to be the next reveal? Like I was having a lot of fun watching it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have like my super critical hat on when I'm watching it, but when I think about it afterwards, I think maybe it could have been a little bit a bit better written. The execution is pretty great, I thought. Like the music is really well done.
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I love the Black Hole Sun that they used in the pilot.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they use a lot of Radiohead too, but in like a score form, I guess, whatever you want to call it. But I like the look of these sort of labs. Like, everything is like, it's like completely open and visible, so everyone can be surveilled by everyone.
Yeah.
And yet you have this, one crazy robot like taking scalpels to other guys' necks and stuff like that. The one sort of idea I liked was when Bernard was talking about, or someone was talking about robots that gain self-awareness, and he said, most of them just go insane, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a really interesting idea to me. Like when you think about, like I've read a lot of pessimistic philosophy, which is so like I'm assuming you guys have all seen the first season of True Detective, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like kind of Russ Cole's like little sound bites of how human consciousness is like is a lie and it's a burden and all that stuff. Like those ideas in Westworld kind of sort of touch on these ideas of like pessimistic philosophy, where once we become really self-aware of our condition, then it's just too much for us to handle.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're almost better off to not be as smart as we think we should be, right? Or like not poke around and not think too much about our consciousness and the basis of our identities and all that stuff,
Yeah.
But again, it does hint at it. It doesn't explore it.
Yeah. I do like that they do kind of explore the idea of gaming. There's this big sandbox to play in. Every character has a story, and if you just follow it in, you can get sucked up into these various narratives. And I think that's all kind of fun.
It does remind me a lot of Red Dead Redemption, I guess, that and some other video games. I was looking at Wikipedia, like BioShock and Elder Scrolls were also an influence on it.
BioShock is cool. I watched my friend play it. It was awesome.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the strength of it, is that when you actually go explore these narratives, you do want to see where they lead to. And I think that is kind of seductive. So I think that kind of plays into the themes of the show. So I really enjoy that portion of it.
I guess I kind of wish, too, though, that they would get a little bit more into, like, the procedural aspect of it. Like, the guy who's the writer, like, talking about how you construct, like, such a huge narrative and just, like, going through the details of that. Like...
Yeah, me too, but I can't stand that character. I think he's a dork.
I don't like him either. Yeah, I don't like him either. But
I do kind of think he has a point, though, is like, this should just be simple entertainment and be done with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does have a point, but then, like, he's not considering that Robert Ford is an insane person, basically, who's, planning this huge coup that involves killing himself.
I guess I think to really get on board, I would like little moments like that, or just where the robots do become self-aware and attack the attack like the technicians, with that scene where the guy's like putting his headphones on, listening to music while the other one's killing his partner.
That was a good scene,
yeah, like something like that where it's just you kind of go through the day-to-day life where like, you have these technological marvels, but they're uninteresting to the people who have to work on them, or like just such a pain in the ass it would be for the writer or other writers maybe down the line in terms of like having to reconstruct an entirely new narrative when you just want to add like one more character, and it's like, oh crap, now I got to figure out what's this guy's reaction going to be to that, and like just plotting that out. But yeah, things like
well,
that.
they do get into the nuts and bolts a bit when they talk about, they allow for some improvisation. So, like, they allow for some robots to go off their narrative loop a bit, but then when they veer too far off, then they, recall them back. So it doesn't, put a wrench into a bunch of other machinations that are happening in the overall game plot or whatever, right? But yeah, if there was more of that, I think it'd be more interesting. I agree, because the scenes that I really enjoyed were the ones with Maeve, or like anything behind the scenes, when they were, aside from like the sort of board member thing.
Yeah, that was pretty stock.
Yeah,
that was like, God, this is so dumb. Like, this is just not interesting to me. And like the younger woman who comes in, she was a lame character, I thought, too.
Yeah, Tessa Thompson doesn't have much to do.
No, yeah. But I did like the lady who was then killed by Bernard. She was interesting, I think. I've never seen her before in anything else, but
no, she was good, and she and Jeffrey Wright had good chemistry together, and they both acted like adults with a job to do and conflicts. So she was the one that doesn't have any secrets and seems to be all up on the board, and you can understand where she's coming from. And I think that's part of the strength of what made her work. I wish there were more characters like that.
One thing I'm a little unclear on is sort of in the middle of the series when one of Bernard's workers investigates this place and she finds like a computer, and then all of a sudden she gets attacked, right?
Right.
So what was that computer doing exactly? Like, it was transmitting something, but but what I was unclear on was like why that was bad, or what was it transmitting, and stuff like that. Like, do you guys remember that part, or do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think they ultimately gave the revelation that Ford was using it to send commands or voices that the robots could hear in their heads.
I gotcha. Okay, so it wasn't like someone stealing IP from the company and then sending it to another company.
Well, there was. Well, I guess they wanted to steal the IP and send it to the board because Ford had such control over it. There's one of the pods in there, and I guess it kind of overlapped with what Hopkins was doing, though they never realized that it overlapped.
Okay,
which seemed kind of needlessly complicated.
Yeah.
But how they connect the dots in this series sometimes says, well, we have to get here, and maybe how we get here doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
But again, I'm like you, Cody. I enjoyed the series. I never grew bored with it. I always thought it looked great. I always thought the cast was very good. I thought the dialogue was often good.
Yeah.
The plotting I wasn't really a fan of because I thought it was kind of looped around too much among itself, or was just too repetitive. I could have used a couple of standalone episodes because I will say this, that most of the series, other than maybe the first episode, does not stand on its own. It's very serial. Yeah. It doesn't tell a complete story from beginning to end or explore a theme from beginning to end in the course of an episode. I think that was one of the strengths of Lost. It actually would tell a complete story within its larger arcs, while Westworld is just kind of like, well, we're going to have to end here because we're out of time, and then we'll pick it up here next week.
Yeah, but I think that's just an HBO thing, right? Like, is that just is it a 10-episode series for each season? And I think that's what they're doing. Like,
yeah, but even
like I had problems with that with the last Game of Thrones series, where I thought it was getting either repetitive or just not a lot of standalone episodes. But I'm not sure if the show was ever like that either.
Well, I mean,
I
you
think
get certain of the
like
battle
that bit.
sequences stand alone, and when they commit a whole episode to that,
Yeah,
or they'll
but there's all that lead up to it. Like if you don't have that lead up to it, the battle is kind of that doesn't make a lot of sense.
True.
I think Game of Thrones is a little bit better though at
It is better, yes.
doing that on a more grand scale, and
It is much better. Yeah, I agree with that.
and I think like it's also better just with like if it isn't going for just episodic themes, like just a grand like seasonal theme.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really, really good with that, and I think that's kind of more the tone of how it just plays out. Like, but I see your point. I think something like this, especially when they have like very specific names for each episode, that like
it could have
would
been
allude to
episode
a specific
1, episode
theme.
2.
Yeah,
It probably worked better that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think Game of Thrones also benefits from all the characters having clear goals and motivations, not having a mystery keeping us at arm's length.
Well, yeah, Game of Thrones is better written, though. It's just, it's just.
I think it's also
better.
it's really, really when it does use filler or when it goes to filler, it's really good filler. Like the entire episode last season where the Hound like joined that religious cult with.
That was a good episode. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I guess that's kind of more of a one-off episode, but I really like that storyline.
Well, I think the main difference is that they use these sort of filler moments to explore the characters. There's lots of filler scenes that don't drive the plot in Game of Thrones with like Grey Worm or something, but they really add to the character.
Right.
And that's a character I really like, and they do it with other characters too, like Tyrion and what's his name, Sam. Sometimes they do it with him, but in this, it's like what were they really going to do? Like they try to do it with Maeve a little bit.
And I think they do it with Bernard a little bit too.
Yeah, with Bernard.
Yeah, but the Man in Black and William, a lot of times they just we're going to point B this episode and we'll go to point C next episode, without really advancing the story.
Yeah, I think the William Dolores plot to me was getting a little tired around episode 9, but and that could have been shortened a bit. But I'm not sure how this works with these TV stations. Like if they prefer a 10-episode arc, and then if the writers and creators are then obligated to fit what they want to do within that, like it seems like Game of Thrones is a bit more leeway because next year they're doing a 7-episode series, right?
Yeah, well, they have the leeway because they've already made their money back on that series.
Yeah, I know. It's so successful, yeah. Another thing I did like in the series that went nowhere was the Wyatt kind of like animalistic cannibal gang. And that just turned out to be like a red herring, I guess, or like a distraction of sorts. But I really like that idea of like these rogue robots, starting their own kind of weird community of like psychopaths. And the idea that, which I don't think is actually true, but the idea that of the park becoming so big and complex that it can't be surveilled properly anymore, and then you have these little subcultures uprising. That idea is really interesting to me, but I think it was revealed to be as all part of another sort of plot, not like an actual plot of the show, but like of the actual show, but the plot of Roberts, for some distraction or whatever. But I think that had some potential, but didn't really go anywhere. But it might go somewhere maybe in the next season.
Yeah, I think they could probably have the robots develop some sort of religion too. That would be an interesting idea to explore.
Oh yeah, that like what's that Philip K. Dick book where it's like that planet with like all those religions around different drugs?
That sounds like Philip K. Dick.
Yeah, the Three Stigmata or whatever it's called. That one. Yeah, that's a really good book. Yeah, but the idea of building something that where you can't control it anymore, like sort of in World on a Wire, where you have levels of virtual reality. Not that would happen here, but just like having something where your creation gets so advanced that you can't control it or surveil it anymore, and then it becomes unruly, but not to the extent that it's going to destroy everything, but just that it's got these own subcultures being made. That idea to me would be really cool and interesting. But it's but again, yeah, they were really interested in doing the sort of like big Nolan-esque plot reveal, you know, where you rethink what happened before or whatever, right? Like in Memento or Prestige
or Inception.
Or Inception, even, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Christopher does it in 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I know.
And it doesn't. He doesn't stall too much. I mean, certainly, I know Jonathan Nolan said it's going to be about memory, which is, I mean, he wrote the original story that Memento is based on. So I guess we'll see how that plays out once they're no longer wiping memories every day.
Yeah. The other idea I liked was that, you know, the robots have residual memories from older parts they were playing, where they have where it's like old software kind of showing up in the new interface or whatever you want to call it, right?
Right.
So that was kind of interesting to me. Didn't really, you know, go anywhere that interesting, but just the idea of it was kind of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing the next season. I guess there's certainly no shortage of Christ-like characters in here that are die and born again. So I guess that the religion will be something that they could explore. I don't have anything else to say about it.
Me too. I'm too much spent.
No, I'm pretty much good on it.
Okay. So I guess we can start talking about next month. Nat, you have the pick.
I do.
What are we watching?
Well, man, I really want to pull for Andromeda Strain, but I don't know if we want to do two Crichtons in a row, and I think Cody will probably pick up that slack sometime down the road. So I'm going to go with one I've been wanting to do for quite a while, and that is the 1950s classic, Them.
Oh, okay.
And I figured since it's Warner Brothers, we can pair it with, and I know Robert will like this, a 1950s Warner Brothers Looney Tunes short.
Okay.
Now, there's not one that's necessarily tied to giant ants. Spoiler alert for them. But I figured Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century would be a good little short to pair that with.
By Chuck Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Just added it to my watch list.
I will say I have seen Them several times in the past. I think there'd be a lot to discuss about it, or at least there'll be a fun discussion.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Cody, have you seen it before?
No, I've never heard of it.
Well, I will say this. It has one of the greatest sound effects ever.
That's true.
Cool.
Okay.
Good lines.
So, join us in January when we'll have Them. You can send us feedback at skies@wherethelongtailends.com. You can leave a note on the message that'll be attached with this post at wherethelongtailends.com, or you can even leave a comment on Facebook, as crazy as that may seem.
What the shit?
We'll be back shortly, hopefully before Christmas, with our special Christmas Secret Santa episode, in which we're all kind of confused about who gave what to who already, so that should make a fun episode. And I hope you enjoy this episode. So I'm going to send you out with Black Hole Sun as it is played in Westworld. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Watch the skies, everywhere. Keep looking. Keep watching the skies.